Candidates for the 3rd Congressional District in Florida, we have Republican Kat Kamak and Democrat Adam Christensen. The format is each candidate receives a 2-minute opening statement, after which I'll be asking questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the same question. At the end of that period, each candidate will have a 1-minute closing statement. Our goal is to be finished by 6:50 to be prepared for the next race of candidates at 7. So we did not flip a coin, but I guess we'll go by alphabetical order, 2 C's with CA versus CH, and so we'll let Kat Kamak make the first opening statement.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much to the Palatka Daily News and the college for hosting tonight's event. My name is Kat Kamak, and I am your Republican nominee for Florida's 3rd Congressional District. A little bit about me: I am the daughter of a single mother, grew up on a small cattle ranch. I am the wife to a local first responder and SWAT medic. I'm the co-founder of the GRIT Foundation, which is the official charity for 14 local police and fire departments, including our very own Palatka Fire and Putnam County Sheriff's Office. I'm also a small business owner, a longtime Deputy Chief of Staff to Congressman Ted Yoho, and now looking to be your next representative for Florida's 3rd District. I am running because I believe in putting America first, and I'm running on an America First agenda. That means pro-life, pro-wall, pro-Trump, pro-business, and pro-Florida and pro-3rd District. I would like to see manufacturing brought back. I would like to see the continuation of projects like Project Putnam, the economic development project that has helped restore and rebuild our infrastructure here locally in Putnam County. I would like to see more support for our first responders here. And I am proud to be endorsed by so many various organizations, ranging all the way from the National Pro-Life Alliance to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to the President of the United States. Here locally, I'm endorsed by Sheriff Gator DeLoach, as well as State Representative Bobby Payne. I think that this is an excellent forum for us to discuss the issues and ways that we can make Putnam County better, because at the end of the day, we are not a representative to just Republicans or Democrats, but all constituents of the 3rd District. So I'm looking forward to a positive and productive conversation about the issues tonight. And I want to thank everyone for the support. We're 21 days out from Election Day, and to date, our team has made over 250,000 volunteer phone calls to constituents all across this district. So we're very excited and looking forward to a productive conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen.
My name's Adam. I am the Democratic nominee for Congress in this district. And it's like most people at this point know, my job is looking through marketing and BS and essentially making sure that small and family-owned businesses don't get screwed over. They don't get taken advantage of. And essentially my job is to catch fraud. My hand's up right now because that's the number of lies that were told in the very first 2 minutes by Kat Kamak. So I'm just going to be counting tonight how many we actually go through. Really, the goal of our campaign and our candidacy has always been that essentially we're anti-corruption, we're going against fraud, and we believe that no one should be too poor to live. And the way that we do that is we actually focus on small and family-owned businesses. We grow and we move forward. We don't just keep continuing to fight for survival. We don't just continue to keep trying to get back to square one and rebuild after every natural disaster. We actually have a plan moving forward. And so my campaign is actually run by people that are all under the age of 23, entirely youth-led. And the goal of that is basically to say that, look, the way things have been for a very long time, they just don't work anymore. And we have to have some people that are actually willing to stand up, shine a flashlight on the way things have been for 8 years, for 40 years, and say, these things don't work anymore. This is the fraud that's been happening, and we're sick of being taken advantage of, and we're not going to take it anymore. Teddy Roosevelt's most famous thing was that he would speak softly but carry a big stick. The problem is with us, we have spoken softly for 40 years, but we have refused to pick up a big stick and actually do what is necessary in order for us to be the focus, people to be the focus. And that's really what we're going to focus on, is people. Building a society sustainably from the ground up, not the top down, and making sure that we actually get returns on the investments that we make, which is our tax dollars, and they don't just get taken and given to people underneath the table. That's why I'm running. My name is Adam Christensen. Good to be here.
Thank you both. Our first question tonight will go to Adam Christensen first, and then to Kat Kamek. What makes you the most qualified candidate to represent Florida's 3rd District in the U.S. House of Representatives, especially as your qualifications relate to Putnam County?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually grew up in an extremely conservative family in Indiana. My grandparents are cattle ranchers, essentially cattle farmers. And really, they understood that you never blame the government for your issues. You simply dig down deep, you start to work hard, and you rebuild. My grandfather lost basically everything in '73 after a beef embargo from Nixon. He had to rebuild his entire life. At the same time, he had a tractor fall down on top of him and snap his neck. He lost a thumb in a tractor chain. He lost his farm a couple of years later and had to completely rebuild that. And he did, and he raised an entire family. That is the kind of hard work and understanding that I grew up with. And so for me, when it comes to Putnam County, we've all understood for years that the reason that Putnam County and small towns, especially across the United States, have gotten destroyed is because you have giant corporations. They come in, they undercut all the family-owned businesses, they undercut the prices, they undercut the salaries, and then they drive those family-owned businesses out of the market. They consolidate the entire thing, and they replace them with jobs that pay a third. What we have to do here in Putnam County is a couple things. Number one, we have to actually, and I'm going to be dropping a jobs plan tomorrow about this, an entire internet highway system through the rural counties, specifically for Putnam and specifically for all the other areas. So we have broadband internet access everywhere. On top of that, we're also going to implement small business incubators, especially here in Putnam County. So people who have ideas for businesses, they can actually start them here instead of moving somewhere else. We get the money flowing in instead of out. We can actually bring tourism in instead of it leaving. And so the goal is, at the end of the day, not just to get back to square one. Project Putnam is to get money back that we were already, required to get back that we deserved. Our plan is to not just get back to square one, it's to move forward and to actually increase the amount of money that's coming into this community and increase the number of small businesses and go back to the way that things are supposed to be, not the way that they are and have been for the last 8 years.
Thank you. Ms. Kamek, the same question to you. What makes you the most qualified candidate to represent Florida's 3rd District in the U.S. House of Representatives, particularly as it relates to Putnam County?
Well, absolutely. Not only do I share the same values as the residents and constituents of Putnam County and the 3rd District, but I have a track record of working in Putnam County since 2017 when we were redistricted and our new district included Putnam County. We began a listening tour in 2017, listening to various stakeholders about the needs, about some of their goals, what they would like to see brought. And it was in this very building that we had stakeholder meetings. It was November 29th of 2017, and there was about 45 stakeholders in the room, ranging from education all the way through commerce. And we had a great meeting that resulted in the foundations that became Project Putnam, a 5-pillar program that I was the architect behind, and it included recovery, and that was recovering the FEMA dollars that were owed to us from various storms. That came out to about $2.3 million in recovery. Then it became about rebuilding our infrastructure, whether it was wastewater treatment systems or, the 62 miles of water lines that needed to be repaired in the city, whether it was the broadband situation in Crescent City. We were actively working on rebuilding the infrastructure, but also creating an opportunity and an environment for jobs. Just last year, we secured a $150 million capital investment in Federal Point, and that was critical for Putnam County because those are high quality, good paying jobs in high-tech ag. Also, as the ag candidate in the race, I've been supported by Florida Farm Bureau. Having a background in ag, I understand the importance of our various industries, including the potato industry, which has been decimated from poorly done trade deals, and also we know how to get things done, and we have the relationships here in the county. So I'm excited about the opportunity to continue to represent Putnam County.
Thank you. Ms. Kamek, will stay with you to be the first recipient of the next question. Talks continue over an additional stimulus package for Americans in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. What should our government do to help American consumers and businesses that have been affected by this pandemic?
So to date, we have seen several different stimulus packages, And what is playing out right now in the national media is a hyper-politicized game of brinksmanship. The president and Nancy Pelosi have traded and sparred over social media over whether or not there should be a comprehensive package or a clean CR. The president has indicated that he would be willing to sign a clean continuing resolution that would allow for stimulus checks to be issued out. However, those on the left want to fill it with pork and an ungodly amount of wasteful spending that has nothing to do with actual economic recovery or direct impact to those in need. So I think that we should 100% be focused on the issue at hand rather than trying to score political points. The PPP program was critical as we saw so many small businesses being affected. But the thing that was disappointing was groups like the Democratic Party of Florida received close to $1 million for their campaigns that ended up in the campaign coffers of Democrat opponents. So I think it's crazy that political parties are eligible to accept taxpayer funds for any campaigning, when in reality, the money for PPP should be going to help these small businesses stay afloat while we rebuild the economy after having been shut down. Additionally, the government can take steps that don't have a dollar assigned to it, and that includes expanding the lending authority, streamlining the process between Treasury and SBA, as well as indexing capital gains to inflation to allow for stability in the markets. So there's a tremendous amount that we can do, and I think it just takes some leadership and willpower to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Christensen, the same question to you. There are talks continuing about an additional stimulus package for Americans. What should our government do to help American consumers and businesses that have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic?
I mean, let's be honest here. It's talks, right? We haven't seen any meaningful anything from our government in a very long time. I mean, 2008, what happened? We had people that lost their homes simply because we decided we were going to give money to people that never should have gotten it. And essentially what happened was the American taxpayers bailed out the biggest companies in the world who used it on bonuses for their own executives and essentially ripped off us. And we never got that money back. They got back on their feet. We never did. Now, we just did the same thing again. She mentioned PPP. No, it wasn't just the Florida Democratic Party. And you're right, they did do that, which is ridiculous. The problem is you had people that decided they were going to take that money. We had privately traded companies, we had hedge funds, and we had a bunch of other basically scammers who decided they were going to take that money and it wasn't going to go to small family-owned businesses. On top of that, you had about $6 trillion that was given out to God knows where. We were told that the only thing we were supposed to get was $1,200 that would sustain us for 7-8 months. Most people, either they didn't see that money or it was gone in less than a couple weeks. Most people before the pandemic had $400 left in the bank account for any unexpected expense. Now you're telling me that the PPP funds, that was the best we could do? We couldn't actually focus on people and make sure that everyone had enough to make sure they could keep their home, they had food on the table, their families would be okay. But we were able to give it essentially to, again, we don't know where it went. We bought Apple stock, biggest company in the world, and we decided we were going to use taxpayer funds and the government's funds to buy Apple stock. Tell me how that helps the small restaurant that's right up the road. Tell me how we can actually keep small businesses here when they're just getting knocked out. Tell me how, I don't know, all of our small businesses are able to go under, essentially not bring any revenue for a month and a half, and they're supposed to survive. Meanwhile, you got the biggest companies in the world who are just waiting so they can sweep them up. And you're telling me, and not you obviously, but our government is telling me that they cannot afford to make sure that everyone has health care in the middle of the pandemic. We're in the middle of the pandemic. So I don't see any talks happening. I don't see anything that's real.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question is going to go to you first, Mr. Christensen. And let me interject here just 1 second. What I would love to have happen here is that we give maximum opportunity for each candidate when they are addressing our readers and people in the community to be able to be heard. So I would ask if you have a disagreement with what's being said, make a note and hang on to that. And when you give your closing argument tonight, talk about it at that time. So, Mr. Christensen, this question is to you first. Civility in Washington politics has reached new lows, with plenty of partisanship guilt on each side of the aisle. how would you represent the best interest of the people of the 3rd District of Florida as opposed to just towing the party line?
Neither party has ever been civil. Let's just start there. What is civility if you have kids that are hungry at school? That's not civility. I don't care what you call it. But at the same time, you're spending more money on foreign wars and having our service members get killed, but you're going to refuse to actually bring them home and make it so that we're not putting them in danger. That's not civility. Starting a war on false pretenses, that's not civility. Making it so that kids who don't have broadband internet, and yet you're expecting them to be able to learn and be educated, but you're not willing to actually do what it takes, that's not civility. So I don't understand this idea of civility when we have kids being locked in cages, and we have parents going bankrupt because they can't afford medical bills for their kids. That's not civil. So I don't care who it is, but if you don't back basic, fundamental things that we all agree on, that if you work 8 hours a day, you should be able to afford a home, you should be able to afford a family, and you should have enough money left over at the end of the week that you are not struggling for survival. Until we have that, I don't want to hear anybody talk about civility, because that's not civility. For me, like I said before, it goes down to what are you going to do for people? Are you going to line your pockets with phosphate mine money? Are you going to fight for Nestle more than High Springs? Are you going to, I don't know, essentially walk into downtown, into DC, and basically say, I'm open for business. Whoever wants to give me money, come give me money. Guess what? I'm going to be your next representative. That means I'm going to line my own pockets. I'm going to take money under the table. I'm going to set up my own consulting company and receive money to that consulting company while I work for a guy who fired me and to my husband's lawn mowing care company. That sounds to me like you're willing to do whatever it takes. And you already know the game in Washington. You already understand how dirty and disgusting it is. And you're not willing to do anything about it. So focus on people and don't just line your own pockets and don't lie to people's faces about what you're doing. Be truthful.
Thank you. Ms. Kamek, civility in Washington politics has reached new lows, it seems, with lots of partisanship guilt on both sides of the aisle. How would you represent the best interest of the people of the 3rd District of Florida as opposed to just towing the party line?
Well, I would start by not attacking my opponent incessantly and actually focusing on issues that matter to our constituents. My opponent just demonstrated, case in point, that there is no civility in his attitude towards me or people who think like me. And it's just really disappointing and sad and desperate, but I think a representative is supposed to represent all constituents, all 710,000 that make up Florida's 3rd Congressional District. And when you take an oath to the United States Constitution to uphold our constitutional republic, not a party. And that is what I am looking forward to doing. We can restore civility by starting with having open, honest conversations, taking a walk in another person's shoes. Today, I had a very interesting conversation with several people in the law enforcement community who also are part of the social justice movement. And we had a very productive conversation on how we can make our communities better and stronger. And that is what I am interested in. Not petty partisan politics, not this back and forth nitpicking, and certainly not obsessing over my opponent. To date, over 200 tweets from my opponent have been slandered and thrown at me. We have not tweeted or responded once because that doesn't help anyone in the 3rd District. We need people who are willing to fight for our principles and our values, the basic constitutional principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I think that civility in Washington is possible. And I do think that it starts by having those relationships here with people across the aisle in the district that we can then take those conversations to Washington. And that is what I'm looking forward to doing.
Thank you. This next question is related, and Ms. Kamak, you receive it first. Hypothetically, a member of the opposing party sponsors a bill that is opposed by your party's leadership, but the bill would create significant opportunity and jobs for our district and Putnam County folks. How would you deal with this situation? How will you work with the opposing party to bring unity to America and do what's best for citizens?
Well, and I think that that is a very real situation that happens often in Washington, D.C. And thankfully, I am the candidate who has the experience and know how to hit the ground running on day one. So if we enter this 117th Congress in the minority as a Republican, I will be working extensively with my Democrat colleagues. And oftentimes you find yourself working in bipartisan manners that sometimes goes against your party's wishes, and that's okay. What we do is we work through the parliamentary process, and we can offer amendments to strengthen bills, to strike certain language. We can work through the process the way that it was designed so that everyone wins in this process. Personally, I would like us to get to a single issue bill movement, because I think comprehensive packages really are to the detriment of the people that we serve. So if we can attack an issue, single issue, and no riders attached, that is when we can actually start making progress. I'm very excited about working bipartisanly with members across the aisle on issues like a guest worker program that is so critical, not just to our district, but to ag across the state. And that is a program that has been broken for 30 years, and we have an opportunity to fix it. But it's going to take Republicans and Democrats. And for too long, this has been the fight, Republican versus Democrat. It is time that we start approaching these issues and these broken issues and programs as Americans, because that is how we get back to prosperity and greatness. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen, the same question. A member of the opposing party sponsors a bill that is opposed by your party's leaders, but the bill would create significant opportunity for the 3rd District and jobs for people in Putnam County. How would you deal with the pressure from your leadership to oppose the bill? And broader, how would you work with the opposing party to bring unity to America and do what's best for its citizens, regardless of party labels?
Yeah, this one's pretty easy. If the bill focuses on people, it actually brings money into our community and it helps us, then yeah, I'll support it. I don't care who the person is. I really don't. And in fact, as you kind of mentioned there, how would you actually, stand up to your own party? Well, I've already done that multiple times. Most people don't know that, we stood up to establishment Democrats in our primary, and we actually focused on the rural areas. We won our race because of places like Putnam County and Clay County. Not because we were playing a game, but because we genuinely said, look, we actually want us to actually do better. On top of that, I kind of went to war with the Florida Democratic Party at one point because they were not helping candidates across the ballot actually be able to have data to be able to actually campaign. And I was able to get that for my House candidates, for the people around me, and I didn't care who I had to go up against. The point is not what party you're in, the point is who do you care about, who are you going to fight for, and who are your friends? Because for me, my friends are people that have student loans that they cannot pay off. My friends are people who cannot afford a home. My friends are people that, they work every single day of their life just so they can have a better life. That's who I care about. I don't care what party you are. I don't care what your name is. If Ted Cruz brought me a bill that was going to bring money to Putnam County, I'd be like, all right, let's talk. I don't like you. I think you're a horrible human being. But guess what? You got a good idea? We'll talk about it. And I'm fine with that. And so for me, I don't care. I don't care who somebody is. I care what they do, because I'm done with people talking. I'm done with people not actually living out what they say. I'm done with people whose words are bigger than their actions. I'm done with people who make up their life story just so they can run for Congress and lie about their background in ag. I am done with people who claim that they were homeless to raise money and they faked it. Because my God, is this really what politics has come to, that you're willing to do that just to get power? You're willing to sell your soul just to get power? I don't want any part of that.
All right, thank you. The next question goes to you first, Mr. Christensen. If you're elected, how visible will you be in Putnam County? Meaning, will you be coming over here for town hall meetings monthly? Be specific in what you would do. And further, would you consider opening a storefront congressional office in Putnam County?
Absolutely, both of those. I think, I've probably been here more than any other Democratic candidate has ever been here. You want to know why? Because this reminds me of the town that my grandparents lived in. It reminds me of the place that I go to visit because I love it. The downtown here is where we filmed our TV ad. The reason is because it's beautiful, it's unique, it's what really the United States should be, but we've lost it. And what really hurts me physically is Putnam is just like so many other towns across the United States where they have a beautiful history and the culture is just wonderful, but the problem is they have become stagnant. They've not been able to move forward. They've not been able to expand, and they've gotten their spirit crushed. So yeah, I'm probably going to be here as much as I've been here since. Why? Because not only do I love it here, but it reminds me of what we should be. And on top of that, the people. I mean, look, you got a small town, you got people that have grown up here that love this place, and they will do everything they possibly can to fight for it. I would rather have people like that around me than a company like Nestle who's willing to pay me money so that I can wipe out a town. That's what happens. Your donors reflect your priorities. And you want to know how much money we've raised? We've raised more than every other Democrat who's ever run here in small dollar donations. We've raised over $150,000, and our average contribution was $20. That has never happened in this part of the country. And you want to know why we're going to fight for people? It's because they're fighting for us. Because they believe in us, not somebody else. And so, yeah, I'm going to do exactly what I've been doing, what my actions are. I let my work speak for itself. And, you know, we've been here more than anybody else, and I don't imagine that's ever going to change. So, I got 15 seconds left. But, yeah, you can go on.
Okay. Ms. Kevin, how visible will you be in Putnam County? Specifically, what will you be doing to make yourself front and center with our constituents here? And would you open a storefront district office in Putnam County?
So one of the great things about Putnam County is the government complex that we have. We currently have an office there that is used regularly, so I'm excited to continue that same tradition of having an office here in the government complex. Also, I think it's important that you have someone who is willing to put pen to paper on what you're doing, which is why the quarterly reports that we've issued and your newspaper has printed and have received on a quarterly basis are so important when it comes to Project Putnam. So every quarter, we will be collecting reports from all of our stakeholders that are involved with Project Putnam to continue that legacy of transparency and accountability, to keep people informed about the various infrastructure and economic development programs that are going on. And that, I think, is key in making sure that all people are held accountable. The other part is really engaging in regular community activities. I've been a regular fixture on the Lions and Kiwanis circuit here, as well as supporting our youth in agriculture, whether it is helping purchase steers or hogs or chickens from the 4-H and FFA kids. I think having that regular engagement is so important. And then, of course, here at the college, there are so many different programs and so much opportunity that is available for students. And so supporting these programs, really putting the two between education and bridging that nexus of education and economic development, that's another way that we're gonna continue to be engaged. But on the healthcare front, we have a VA clinic here in Putnam County, and I would love to see more resources made available, and so I'll be taking regular trips and visiting with the staff there, as well as working to restore the OBGYN unit at the hospital.
Thank you. This next question goes to you first, Ms. Kemet.
Sure.
It has been an eventful year in our nation related to protests demanding social justice, racial justice, and backlash from those offended by those protests. What is your view toward balancing public safety with the right to protest and free speech?
So as a constitutional conservative, I believe adamantly that people should have the right to freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press. And I think that the right to peacefully assemble is the cornerstone of our constitutional republic. But when that turns deadly and violent and private property is destroyed, that is when it becomes a problem. And so I think that it is very detrimental to our constitutional republic and our communities to see this kind of outrage and destruction. It's tearing communities apart, and it's a disgrace that it has reached this level. As the wife of a first responder, I take it exceptionally personally when I hear calls from people to defund police. it is not the answer. Defunding the police is not the answer. If anything, we should be defending our police and allocating additional funding to our first responders so that they have the necessary equipment and training to keep our communities safe. I think that there is absolutely a dialogue that needs to happen in our country. But if we are starting from a place of violence, that is not the answer. And in my view, it should not be tolerated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen, same question.
I grew up in the church, and I was always taught that the greatest radicals, the people that, really changed society, were the ones that didn't care what anybody else thought of it. They were the ones that were in the streets promoting and going for big, substantial change. I mean, the people that Jesus had around him were not the political establishment. They were not the religious leaders. They were not the people comfortable in their role in society. They were the lepers and the people that were sick and hungry and tired and hurting. And those were the people that had nothing left to lose. The reason we have so many things that are happening right now in our society is because so many people have nothing left to lose. They are tired of being taken advantage of. They are tired of being trampled on. They are tired of not being seen as human. What I believe is that every single person should be treated as a human, no matter who they are, no matter what they look like or what they say or how they sound or anything. They should be treated as human. And right now as a society, we are more willing to lock somebody up than prevent them from having to commit an act like stealing. Right now, we are more than willing to increase the number of beds we have in a prison than increase the amount of money that we give to health services to stop mental health issues from becoming bigger. Right now, for some reason, I just cannot understand it, we are more willing to pay for the responsibility and the action afterwards than preventative measures. Everyone with a small business understands that if you invest early, you get the reward at the end. But for some reason, we have decided we're just going to invest at the end and let the rest of it fall by the wayside. So for me, a police officer should not be the first responder to a mental health crisis. They should not be the first responder to a drug conviction or a drug case. It should be somebody who is an expert in mental health or an expert in addiction. And until we start funding those things and actually stop putting Band-Aids on bigger systemic wounds, nothing will ever fundamentally change. Go in and clean out the wounds. Go in and make sure it never gets to this point, and you save money, and you have a better society. And right now, if we had a Boston Tea Party, apparently some people would be upset about that. And I don't understand it.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen, this next question goes to you first. Are you satisfied with the federal government's actions to date related to the pandemic? And if you are not, specifically, what should it be doing differently?
Oh, my goodness, what should it have been doing for 40 plus years differently? Oh, what did we believe in the 1890s, right? Teddy Roosevelt, he said that billionaires like J.P. Morgan, billionaires like Rockefeller, they were killing capitalism. He understood that monopolies kill capitalism, that price fixing destroys the free market. Our federal government has allowed that to happen for years. They decided that if we give money to the top, eventually it'll get down to the bottom, but the problem is that never happens. So our federal government should completely change the way it thinks about our society. It should start at the bottom. What should we have done in this pandemic? We should have done what every other single freaking country in the world did. They decided to give $2,000 to every single person in this country to make sure that they could afford their home, they could have their family, and they would not feel desperate. And what happens is that trickles up, because if you give the money to the people, the banks are fine, and everybody else is fine. But if you just give the money to the banks, guess what? They're still coming for your mortgage. They're fine, they're stable, but they're still coming for your apartment rent, and you can't pay it, and the entire system collapses. I'm tired of people believing that greed is good, because greed is not good. Greed is destructive. Greed is what is wrong with what we have. Greed is the reason we have so much fraud and corruption, and the reason all of our money seems to go in all the wrong places. I want to shrink freaking government. I want to shrink the government in the places it's not needed so that we can actually have government in the places that it is. And right now we have too big of government in some places and too small of it in others. And I am ready to reallocate these resources from billionaires, from people who pay nothing in taxes, from people who scam the system, and give it back to people that live in Putnam and live in this district, because I'm just sick and tired of the way things have been. And if nobody else is going to say it, I will. And if nobody else is going to do anything about it, our team will, because we got nothing left to lose, just like so many people around here. That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell. Are you satisfied with the federal government's actions to date related to the COVID-19 pandemic? If not, specifically, what should be done differently?
So this is an issue that comes up in every forum that we've had to date, even in the primary. And I think it's so easy for people to Monday morning quarterback the situation. There's always going to be criticisms, and there's always going to be room for improvement. That is without a doubt. I don't think anyone was prepared for a pandemic of this magnitude. It certainly didn't help that China withheld critical information and data from the global community, and WHO was complicit in that cover-up, which thankfully we have taken steps to remove ourselves from that organization. So again, while it's easy to sit there and criticize, I think that President Trump was right to shut down travel from China. I think he was right to shut down travel from the EU. And he was criticized all the while from the liberal left and members of the media. I think that it is very difficult to shut an entire economy down, but in concert with the governors and local stakeholders, there was an effort to really flatten the curve. Did it get it right everywhere? Absolutely not. Did we have the necessary PPE? Absolutely not. But that is something that we are working to fix, and we will fix. That starts by bringing manufacturing back to the United States. We have had decades of shipping our jobs overseas to places like China. So we're going to bring that manufacturing home. We're also going to bring home the pharmaceuticals that are manufactured and compounded so that we have the necessary resources to respond. We are currently in the middle of Operation Warp Speed, which is developing a vaccine with all the major pharmaceutical companies in the country, which they're seeing tremendous progress. Cutting the red tape through all of the federal agencies and mobilizing a response has been a tremendous lift. I think that the moratorium on evictions through the end of the year was also another smart move, but we have to start reopening our economy now.
Thank you. Ms. Kemek, this question goes to you first. Our election process has been a focal point of national attention. What is your view toward the process as it is? And should we make it easier than it is at present, or should restrictions be tightened?
When it comes to voting, I think that is absolutely everyone's civic duty who is a U.S. citizen to get out and vote. I think that in the state of Florida, we have great opportunities to get out, and there should be no excuse. We have absentee voting, which starts 45 days out. We have 2 weeks of early voting and, of course, the day of. I'm very concerned about voter fraud in states that have blanket mail-out ballots. We've seen cases where military ballots have been tossed in the trash. We have seen multiple households receive ballots that didn't request them. And so there is absolutely room for fraud. There's also situations across the United States where we have states where you can cast your ballot after Election Day. That is wrong. I think everyone should have the opportunity to vote, but I don't believe in same-day voter registration. I also believe that you should have an ID in order to vote, so you can prove that you are who you say you are. If we do not have integrity in our elections, then the system loses its credibility. And here in the 3rd District, I think we have a great track record of having stellar supervisors of elections that protect the integrity of the process. So I feel very comfortable in our district that voter fraud will be a non-issue. But I think that we need to protect the system as intended so that on election night, we know who the president is. We know that the Electoral College is working the way that it was designed. And that's another thing. We need to protect the Electoral College so that the voice of the minorities are protected. And the flyover states in Middle America have a say just as much as New York, California, Texas, or Florida. So I think that there's always room for improvement. The implementation of the ERIC system here statewide has definitely rooted out some fraud. But overall, I think that we are in good shape here in the 3rd District.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen, our election process has been a focal point of national attention. What is your view about this? Should we make it as easy as possible for everyone, or do you think there should be some restructuring and restrictions?
Is that a question?
Yes, sir. That is a question to you.
I think that's ridiculous. I think that's a ridiculous question. I mean,
All right, well, we can
no,
move
not,
on.
not from you, just in
Okay.
general, that I've heard is we don't want people to vote now in the United States. This is the thing we want to do. We want to make it harder for people to vote like we have been for years. Like we want to make it so that we have poll taxes again. I don't get it. I mean, every other country in the world seems to have figured out democracy with the United States, where they basically say that, look, here, we're going to make it as easy as possible for you to vote. We're going to make election a holiday so you can go vote. So you're not, stuck at work. We're going to make sure that, it doesn't matter who you are, you have a say in your life. You can actually be an American citizen. You can actually have the full ability to be a patriot and do your civic duty. But for some reason in the United States, for years, we have made it harder. I don't get that. The fraud she talks about happens 0.00007% of the time, and yet she's still worried about it. How many ballots was it, Kat, that were fraudulent in the last election? Or are you just making it a non-issue because you got nothing else to talk about? I don't understand that. On top of that, I'm somebody who, literally my job is catching fraud, and yet I'm not worried about this. That should tell you something. Because if you got people that are fear-mongering and they're going to talk about integrity, but they're willing to do a whisper campaign against a Republican opponent in primary claiming he's a pedophile because he's catching up to him in the polls, you have no ability to talk about integrity. That's disgusting. And so, yeah, I am not going to play these games where people are just going to fear-monger when the job of the United States citizen is to be able to vote. And the job of the United States government is to make sure that they can and they have every opportunity to, and they are able to fulfill their civic duty. And anybody who wants to get in the way of that, they got to go through me, because I'm done with that. I am done with the poll taxes we've done here in Florida. I'm done with people taking away people's right to vote. I am done with the majority of Floridians saying everyone should be able to vote, and then us finding some legal loophole out of it. I'm done with that.
Thank you. This will be our final question, and afterwards, each candidate will have a 1-minute opportunity for a closing statement. This goes first to you, Mr. Christensen. How would you balance economic growth and creating more jobs in Putnam County versus protecting natural resources? Specifically, what would you do to protect our environment in Putnam County?
Yeah. Oh, this is going to be great. And this is why I said I was dropping a jobs plan tomorrow, because what people don't realize is you can be environmentally friendly and make a ridiculous amount of money doing it. We're going to drop a jobs plan tomorrow that's going to bring about 9,000 new jobs to this area, to this district. Here's how we do that. Number one, we're going to expand the airport a little bit so we get investors who can fly straight in. We're going to do a high-speed rail system because I'm sick of us giving money to California and not actually regrowing our economy. We're going to create an interstate highway system for the internet through all of the rural counties, which is going to allow us to actually build small businesses again. We're going to set up small business incubator hubs that are here in Putnam County, Clay, all the surrounding areas. And here's where we get environmentally friendly. We're going to get rid of the phosphate mines out in Union Bradford County. You want to know why we do that? Because if we do that, phosphate fertilizer is the #1 expense for most farmers, and it's at the same time one of the biggest prohibitors for us to move forward. If you stop poisoning the land, if you cut off that resource, and you say, look, we want family-owned farms to grow again, we're going to do carbon farming pilot programs with universities, including this university here. It's going to allow small family-owned businesses get going again, and they're going to have higher yields with less cost of fertilizer. And the only thing we did was stop poisoning our ground and our water. On top of that, we got a few other things that we're looking at that are going to bring jobs specifically here, but I want to give people the ability to actually take their own life back, to be able to start something that they own, that is their baby, that they can grow themselves and be proud of. Because when you have that in a community, everything else falls into place. When people are proud of the place that they live, proud of the place they can be, and they have a way to actually grow it, that's all people need. And that's what people, I think, in Putnam County, and especially in other places, have been waiting for years, is somebody to just come in and say, look, the way things have been, fighting for survival, it's not good enough anymore, and we got to wait forward.
Thank you. Ms. Kamak, same question to you. How would you balance economic growth and creating more jobs in Putnam County with protecting our natural resources? And specifically, what would you do to protect and preserve our environment?
So you obviously cannot have one without the other. Protecting the environment goes hand in hand with balancing economic priorities. So I think it's pretty safe to say that this can easily be a bipartisan issue. No one wants dirty air, no one wants dirty water. And for anyone who has spent time on the St. Johns River, you know how much of a gem and how valuable and beautiful it is. So I am very excited about the opportunity to really invest in infrastructure here in Putnam County that is going to help the environment. That means investing in new wastewater treatment systems so that we can get people off of septic tanks. That has been a regular discussion when it comes to water quality issues in the state of Florida. That improved wastewater treatment system and that infrastructure will dramatically increase the water quality as well as the environment here locally. The other thing is I want to protect Rodman Dam. That has been a controversial issue for as long as I can remember. And that's pretty much coming on 9 years that I've been in the area. So I think we need to protect Rodman Dam. That ecosystem has been well established, and it has become one of the jewels of Putnam County. I also think we need to continue investing in clean energy. Seminole Electric is one of the great employers here in Putnam County, employing more than 200 workers and supporting their families. They just made an incredible multi-million-dollar investment in LNG and clean energy. I think LNG, which of course we know in Jacksonville is the largest bunkering hub for LNG in North America. Utilizing that technology, that is going to be the bridge that gets us into new technologies as we look at energy needs for the future. So I think there's tremendous things that we can do from a federal level to help facilitate this, and I'm really excited about that opportunity to continue that great work.
Thank you. We now enter the final phase of this forum. Each candidate will have basically a minute to sum up your comments and make any other statements that you would like to share with our viewers and our readers. So, Mr. Christensen, you were second at the beginning, so you can be first at the end.
That's great. Like I said, my name is Adam, and in case you can't tell, I don't do well with people who lie to my face. I don't do well with people who steal from the people around me and take advantage of others. I think it's about time that we actually got to the root of the issue. Kat, what was the reason that Ted Yoho actually fired you? Because I would like to know that, because he said in a Facebook post it was not because you went to work on his re-election campaign. But for some reason, he fired you and you started to make more money from him. I would like to know what the answer to that is, because I feel like most voters around here, they've been asking that question and you've been hiding from it. In fact, you didn't want to have a question portion of this because you were afraid of me asking this question. So I would like to know why that is, because, well, I think everybody wants to know. Why were you fired? And why did he refuse to endorse you? What was the actual reason?
No. Mr. Christensen, this is an opportunity for you to
I'm aware.
speak.
I would like to know, because she's going to hide from the question. She's going to refuse to say anything.
Your 1
It's
minute
gonna be
session
great.
is up, sir, so thank you for that. Ms. Kemick, you have 1 minute to summarize and speak.
Thank you. Well, again, thank you to the Palaca Daily News and to the college for hosting this event. I think viewers will see a clear difference in candidates here tonight. I believe in equal opportunity. My opponent believes in equal outcome. This is free economic growth and really unleashing the economic engines that we know are possible here in Putnam County. My opponent wants to saddle us with higher taxes and socialism. He won't say it, but he believes in the Green New Deal, defunding the police, doing things that are just, quite frankly, un-American. His entire campaign has been built on lies and trying to discover some fake life that he claims I've been leading. Nothing could be further from the truth. And quite frankly, it's a sign of a desperate campaign, which is why we have been working on running a positive, issue-based campaign. You can learn more about us and where we stand on the issues at catforcongress.com. And again, thank you to everyone for tuning in and watching. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you both, Ms. Kemick, Mr. Christensen. Thank you both for coming tonight. Appreciate you offering yourselves for public service. I think that takes a lot for someone to do that. And we are going to take a 10-minute break here while we wipe down the platform and let the next set of candidates come in. So thank you, viewers. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Two.
Good evening and welcome back if you were with us for the first debate tonight. My name is Michael Leonard. I'm the publisher of the Pulaski Daily News, and we have the pleasure of co-sponsoring this forum along with St. John's River State College. We are joined here in the second hour for this candidate forum by the candidates for District 19 in the Florida House of Representatives. We have Bobby Payne, who is the incumbent in this race, and Kim Duggar, who is the challenger. And we welcome you both. The way this will work is each candidate will receive a 2-minute opening statement, followed by a round of questioning, same question to each person. They will receive 2 minutes to answer. When we get to around 45 minutes, we'll stop the questions and answers and give each candidate a 1-minute opportunity to make a closing statement. So, thank you both. And the opening statement first will be you, Ms. Duggar.
Hello, good evening, and thank you. Albert Einstein said, "Nothing happens until something moves." As a principal for 35 years, I always made things move. Staff would say, if you want something done, ask Kim Duggar. That leadership experience will soon serve you. My father was an orphan and passed when I was 13, but he instilled in me the values of family, character, and love. As the first sibling in my family to attend college, I earned a doctorate degree in educational leadership. But like many, my life did not go as planned and was not perfect. I was dealt with hardships, going through divorce, being a single mother, struggling to pay bills and child care, losing a job, swallowing my pride to get food stamps, and repaying student loans. And most recently, navigating the pain of caring for my mother with dementia. But I have succeeded, and here I am. Tonight, you and I are going to discuss our common purpose to bring our district up to its potential. This is a list of my opponent's campaign contributions. These include Disney World tickets, phosphate corporations, oils, energy, banks, lobbyists, lawyers, developers, big agriculture, big sugar, the very same companies who pollute and take from citizens of our district. 95% of my contributions are from local citizens. Please know, it is not my intent to disparage for anyone. And people say that my opponent is a nice guy, but that is not enough. Big companies do not support candidates without expecting something in return. There is a reason that in 2018, Putnam County ranked last out of 67 counties in quality of life. Education and income levels are roughly the same. That reason is called ineffectiveness. You deserve better. You have a clear choice. When you go in that voting booth, vote to make things move. Vote to lift ourselves up. Vote for progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's an honor to be meeting with my challenger tonight. So I am Bobby Payne. I'm a native of Putnam County. I am your current state representative for District 19, which makes up Putnam, Bradford, Union, and portions of Clay County. Served 4 years, and very proud of the success we've had. I'm retired from electric cooperative and electric after 38 years of service, and married to my wife Margie. I have a stepson Chance, married to Sarah, and 2 granddaughters, Riley and Lily, and we enjoy them very much. My education background is that I have a bachelor's degree from JU and MBA from Nova Southeastern University. I'm a member of the First Baptist Church of Pulaski and have served through 30 years of community service, such as being a 30-year Rotarian, served on the United Way Board as treasurer, served as past chairman of the Chamber of Commerce and been involved with that association for well over 25 years. Served on the Roberts Character Center as a capital fundraising campaign and on their advisory board. Was co-chair of ARC of Putnam County for fundraiser. I've been on the St. John's River State College Executive Athletic Board, where I still serve, and fundraising chair for District Boy Scouts, involved in all types of community service. I'll address the issue of, Mrs. Duggar said earlier about lobbyists and big money, and I'll address that later on in our closing statements. I think you'll be interested to hear that. But I'm proud of the fact that Putnam County in 4 years I've been able to appropriate close to $7 million, working with my colleagues, Senator Perry, Senator Bradley, Representative Cummings, we've appropriated $24 million in this district. So very proud of that, very proud of the legislation that we have passed, including a comprehensive environmental bill this past year on water policy. It's considered by the governor as one of the more advantageous water policies in the last 2 decades. Thank you.
Thank you. We now enter the question and answer phase. The first question will go to you, Mr. Payne, and then also to you, Ms. Duggar. Question is, if elected, what would be your top priority and how will it benefit residents of this district? And what qualifications do you have that ensure residents that you can accomplish these goals?
Thank you for the question. First priority remains still is economic development, economic opportunities for our region, making sure that we know that Northeast Florida is about to boom with the explosion of population growth because it can be a hub for growth in this area, but we still have to protect those rural assets that we know and appreciate so well. But economic development, and one key component of that I've spoken to 3 different people about today is expanding rural broadband access. In no time in history have we seen rural broadband be more important than we've seen with the COVID crisis for education, academia, and for business reasons. At the same time, working on economic growth so we can provide jobs, those much needed jobs. And then second, I would work on educational outcomes for moving trade schools into a better position where we have people have careers with technical trade and career organizations. Knowing that I've already worked with some big enterprises and private partnerships to start working on those developments. Additionally, I think we need to continue. I've been tapped to continue running water policy, which is so important to us in the state, certainly those along the St. Johns River for our lakes, springs, and estuaries. Those will be some of the issues I'll continue to work on, as well as looking at how we will be able to manage better healthcare opportunities, and then tort reform. Tort reform is a big issue in our state because of the frivolous lawsuits we have. So this is just some of the ideas that I have that I'll be working on, and I think my education and experience and my ability to work with colleagues has been proven, got a proven track record, and I'll continue to work on that as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Duggar, what, if you are elected, would be your top priority? How will it benefit the residents of this district? And specifically, what are the qualifications you have that ensure residents that you can accomplish these goals?
My top priority would be education, because everything goes from education. All success begins with education. And the schools, if you look at it was very disheartening for me a few years ago when I moved here. I love this district, but looking at the school graduation rates and the school statistics, 4 out of 11 of our elementary schools are on the lowest performing schools in the whole state. 4 out of 11, that's a lot. And little kids in elementary schools, they're like sponges. They love to read. I was a principal for many, many years, and I was a turnaround specialist. I went into schools, and I can assure my voters that I know how to go into schools and implement professional development and help teachers. I'm not blaming teachers for the failure of schools. Teachers usually don't perform for 1 or 2 reasons. Number 1, they don't know how, or number 2, they're not expected to. And I get the sense here that really they're not expected to. We have 2 elementaries that are very close by, and we have NEFAC right down Northeast Florida Education Consortium. They should be helping those schools. 2 of the schools have been on the list of the consistently lowest performing schools for 3 years. So I don't know where anybody is trying to help these schools. So if we talk about, I would love to see better educate. In fact, I will pass legislation to update the vocational courses in our high schools, so those kids can walk across that stage and get a legitimate vocational certificate. But getting back to these, so we have to start at the elementary school. It will, like I said, it will, when you improve education, it improves the whole district. Even if voters don't have kids in school, it just benefits everyone. And I have done that before, and I will do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then this question is to you first, Ms. Duggar.
Okay.
What plans do you have to re-energize the state's economy amid the COVID-19 pandemic, which continues? And how will you help small businesses meet the challenges they face, specifically small businesses, in keeping their doors open?
Oh, well, I think we ought to subsidize small businesses as the lifeblood of our counties and our communities. So we do need to go in and help them, subsidize them, pass legislation to keep them going, payment protection plans, small business support, keep and increase the support from within the communities. Try to get people to buy local. We have a lot of commerce right here now, but we need to build on that. And one of my plans is to increase the involvement in people coming downtown. When you look up Putnam County on the web, they say our festivals are two of the most the biggest draws. But we can really increase that. And I would like to see the health of our citizens improve. I'd like to see a health council and more people come downtown. You see runs and walks. We have a lot of people going over the bridge. We can really improve on that and bring more people downtown, and that will boost our economy and help our small businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Payne, same question. What plans do you have to re-energize the state's economy in the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you, Michael. We know the state has taken a hit of about $5 to $6 billion because of the COVID crisis, and that those dollars are still being added up. Fortunately, the state of Florida has put reserve dollars back for many, many years to cover some of those costs. That, coupled with federal dollars, will help us as a state regain our fiscal health. Locally, what we need to do is continue the ideas we've talked with the Chamber of Commerce and is trying to get more street traffic downtown. Ms. Duggar may not be aware of the fact that we've had studies done and have paid a consultant to come in and help us start developing street traffic along the second block in the city of Platte. At the same time, I think we know there's about 1,000 people moving to Florida a day, net people, and that's back to the 2006 era that we saw in Florida trend of about 1,000 people a day. That gives us an opportunity as a community to capture those growth potential through real estate, and through jobs, and through high-tech investment, and bring those folks to an area that they want to be in with great natural beauty along the St. Johns River, and the opportunity to enhance jobs. Educational workforce is very important. Again, that's an incentive that I have to work on education workforce and career tech. Not all students are college bound. Many students in rural communities need to look for a career that will allow them to engage in their local communities, and therefore start with a good base salary and move into an entrepreneurial opportunity where they can own the business one day. So those are opportunities that we see for us in this area. I think the expansion of the Inner Beltway will bring additional overflow to Clay, St. John's, and the region, and we're looking forward to working with our partners and our private partnerships to expand these opportunities.
Thank you. Question number 3 goes to you first, Mr. Payne. Governor Ron DeSantis and Education Secretary Richard Corcoran mandated the reopening of schools in August amid the pandemic, where school districts would face funding cuts or hits. How would you balance keeping students and teachers safe in the midst of this pandemic while seeing education needs are met in the state's budget?
Great question, and it's a question that brings to mind something that we heard earlier. I'm very proud of the fact that our school superintendent in this district has brought our school graduation rate up from 54%, almost to the state average, close to 90%. What we have to continue to do is balance those extremes of, we know that children are not not susceptible to COVID as we understood initially. We see things like vaccines being produced. But we have to protect teachers, and we have to protect, where we're seeing most of it now is in sports and athletics. In fact, the University of Florida just suspended their program for this weekend. You're seeing a lot more of that throughout the district. I spoke to a school board member in Clay County today, and she confirmed the exact same thing. What we're seeing also statistically is that based on comorbidity of people that have passed away and the number of people that are exposed, the average number is much less than what the media often reports. So if there's a true death related to COVID, that should be counted as a COVID expiration. But also, many people already have pre-existing conditions, and those comorbidities are often counted against us as well. It's important for that teachers, I would say, continue doing what we're doing with the CDC guidelines, continue wearing face masks, do distance learning or virtual learning, as many possible opportunities to bring kids and get them back to school. Part of the problem, Richard Corcoran was the speaker when I was first engaged in the legislature, our speaker. Kids at home are suffering for many reasons. Some of them are suffering because of neglect, some because of abuse, some don't have meals, especially in poor rural communities. So it's important to have those kids back in school, and it's important to make sure that we don't miss a year or two gap in education opportunities. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Ms. Duggar, Governor DeSantis, Education Secretary Corcoran mandated the reopening of schools in August amid the pandemic. If they didn't open, school districts would face funding hits. How would you balance keeping students and teachers safe through this pandemic while making sure education needs are met in the state's budget?
In public schools, I believe that we reopened the schools way too fast. And you can see that with the lawsuits by the National Education Association, Florida Education Association, suing that on behalf of teachers. Teachers are on the firing line. They are our heroes. They go to the extreme limits to help our students. And since COVID, when we had the virtual school, there was so much disparity among the quality of those the virtual teachers. Some students were allowed to were promised iPads, and some of them did not receive iPads. So we could have done a much better job with the virtual learning, more monitoring of it, more teachers. It was much better than just saying, okay, all these kids have to go back to school. Because we were putting their lives at stake. And some of these schools right away had to be closed. So when you look at all those things, it was not wise. Kids, and if you ask kids, what do you want to do? I want to go back to school. They gave them a choice. Well, we give kids an option to fail. We already do that. If you ask Johnny, do you want to go out and play with Susie on the playground, or do you want to go do your makeup work? What's he going to do? Okay, and we gave him a choice this time, and I think it was a wrong choice. We're the adults. We're the ones that are supposed to be looking out for them. We did not need to open schools so fast. We could do a better job with those kids at home. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question goes to you first, Ms. Duggar. How would you balance economic growth in creating more jobs in Putnam County with protecting our natural resources? What would you do overall to preserve our environment? And please provide some specifics.
Okay. One of the things is I would have passed a more legitimate Clean Waterways Act. That has been dubbed as one of the most missed opportunities in the state of Florida. It's also been dubbed an alligator without teeth. It's also been dubbed by myself the Lean Waterways Act. There's not one environmental group in the state of Florida that supported it. The special interests, lobbyists were all over it, making sure, our industries are going to be there. And when you look at it, the rules, they cannot be implemented until the legislature goes back into session and approves those rules. There was a task force assigned to look at that bill. And none of the recommendations from the task force, the very experts that they hired, none of the recommendations were accepted. So it was ramrodded through. It's a hollow bill, and that's one of the things I would have done. It's very disappointing because we do have the beautiful St. Johns River right here. So We do have, as Mr. Payne said, we have about 950 people coming into Florida a day. And we have to have a balance between business and conservation. So we just need to keep on, have oversight on that. When we have a change in administration, it needs to be one of the priorities, and it needs to be one of the priorities here in Putnam County. Climate change also is one of the #1 issues. We need to be aware of that, and I would like to see some classes some free classes to educate our citizens after I take office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Payne, how would you balance economic growth and creating more jobs in Putnam County with protecting our natural resources, and some specifics on what you would do overall to preserve our environment?
Thank you for the question. I'm not sure which bill Mrs. Duggar thought she read, but I do have support from Audubon Society, several different environmental groups, as well as DEP and EPA. That bill was labor of love for me for 4 years, and yet it's a line in the sand. We will continue to do more, and I've been tapped to run water policy, and we'll continue to do water policy. That bill had 40 stakeholders that agreed to that merit of that bill. And so what I would continue to do is, as we know, there'll be growth in Northeast Florida, and there'll be opportunities for real estate growth, and there'll be opportunities to make sure we clean up industrial waste, sanitary sewer overflows, not continue to have biosolids put in proper places. We'll do septic to sewer conversions. All of those particular nutrient loading issues along the best management practices for agriculture and the BMAP areas that we see throughout the state. The growth for economic development is got to be essential, but the future land use maps are often something we have to look at very closely. And I agree, we don't want to overdevelop our natural resources to the extent that we have waste. We have to look at how we're going to supply clean quality of water, drinking water, and quantity of water. Some of those will come down to clean water and re-injecting in the aquifer. One of the bills that I was most proud of that run my freshman year with Senator Bradley was a aquifer recharge bill for the lakes in Keystone. It's in Keystone today. That bill is a $13.5 million project the first year, $5 million recurring. It's a natural resource bill that will bring back the economy to the area by reestablishing better recreational values, better land use values, real estate values, as well as charging the Florida aquifer. Thank you.
Thank you. This question comes to you first, Mr. Payne. Putnam County has relied on a strong industrial base to stay below the state's unemployment rate during the pandemic. Yet the county has numerous tourism opportunities, as evidenced by the fact that Palatka was named a trail town in 2019. How could Putnam County do a better job of taking advantage of these opportunities, and what would you do as its state representative to make the area more attractive on both the tourism sector as well as for new business and industrial opportunities?
Thank you. As we've said earlier, Palatka and Putnam County has had a lot of different festivals that we count on bringing people into our area. That's not enough. The bike trail area, the sea to river trail that's now currently ongoing. Trails are opportunity for people to ride bikes, and as we know, older adults often like to get out on their bikes and ride and see sights. Ecotourism development is a great opportunity for us. We know that some of the base employers, industrial employers in the area kept our unemployment numbers from spiking. So we have to continue to look at, much like our previous question, we have to look at those opportunities for ecotourism, opportunities to continue with our rural nature and our agricultural communities, and then look at the downtown areas, Palatka being the center of the county. Have to look at how we're going to expand those opportunities and then bring more real estate, more jobs, and more civic function opportunities to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Duggar, Putnam County has relied on a strong industrial base to keep its unemployment rate below the state level during the pandemic. We also have many tourism opportunities, as evidenced by the fact that Palaca was named a trail town in 2019. How could the county take advantage of these opportunities better, and what would you do as its state representative to make the area more attractive, both for tourism and new businesses?
Well, one of the things I'd like to do, I serve on the board of the Historical Society, is restoration of Noah's Ark. It's got such historical value, and it would be fantastic. I know that would be a big draw for people to come to Putnam and take a ride on that boat down the St. Johns River. Also, on the outside of the town, there's an old prison, and it was in the days of the chain gangs, and I'd like to see restoration of that, especially in the midst of our racial unrest. It would be great for our community to restore that and actually build the old, this railroad car with the, everything, so they could actually see what it was like for prisoners. The prisoners built those roads, these roads here. So that would be a great history lesson. It would be a draw for a lot of people to come to see. It could be field trips for our own students. It's something that's kind of in the works right now with some friends. So that would be a great draw. I'd like to also help the neighborhoods, help the existing neighborhoods that are here. Some of my constituents I've spoken with, because that's infrastructure. They're beholden to that are termed in this slumlords that are charging them so much money each day if they're late, and they're having a hard time staying in their rental community. So I'd like to address those. So we could bring in more of our community members. And again, Mr. Payne said the trails are fantastic. Reach out to some of the clubs and ask them to have their conventions here. We have beautiful buildings right here in downtown, and that would be fantastic. We could bring some more conventions here. So thank you.
Thank you. This next question is to you first, Ms. Dunn.
Okay.
We are now more than 7 months into battling COVID-19 and this worldwide pandemic. Are you satisfied with the state's steps in managing the pandemic and the steps that Governor DeSantis has taken? And in your view, what has the state done right or wrong in handling the pandemic? And what would you do as a state representative if this is still around in 2021 in helping us get over the hump?
It has been something that's just rocked us and changed our worlds, turned us upside down. Of course, we got such a late start on it because of the administration as it trickled down. People were not taking it seriously. So many people are not wearing masks, and it was not mandated to wear masks, and it was so fragmented. This district was doing that, this community was doing that, everybody was doing something different. I think one of the things that we did wrong was not mandate masks totally across the whole state. And for flights, we could have done more with bringing in flights. We didn't stop those, and then found out that a lot of people were flying to Florida from New York and bringing it with them. For the future, I hope that we continue listening to begin listening to the scientists, and everybody does their due diligence everywhere with their families, everybody, and there's some more consistency in our businesses, in the places that we go. There's just consistency, and we all respect it. I'm trying to think of something that the state has done right, and honestly, I cannot. We had a playbook. We knew exactly what they could do right is be more prepared next time, and implement those emergency procedures right away. Tell the truth. Let people know. Be honest. This is a dangerous thing. You need to stay inside. And Well, I guess I did realize one of the things, they did make bars close, so that was good. But then they let them open if they served food. So
Thank you.
anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Payne, we're now more than 7 months into battling the COVID-19 pandemic. Are you satisfied with the governor's steps in managing the pandemic? And in your view, what has the state done right? What should it have done differently? And what would you do as a representative, as a leader for Putnam County in making things better?
Well, thank you for the question. Certainly, the pandemic and the coronavirus has been unprecedented in our lifetimes. I tell people all the time, make sure your kids understand historically what this means, because we'll be talking about this for some time. I do believe the governor handled the response to COVID as best as possible, putting in staged and phased implementation of shutting down businesses. There's business mandates, and so when you shut down business from a governmental mandate, you start ruining the economy. We knew that was going to happen. With regard to from the national level down, we supported the president's position of trying to get ventilators developed, moving big organizations in developing ventilators and respirators and other opportunities. One thing I would definitely changed that I saw that was difficult, I had many calls about it, was the opportunity to visit elderly folks in nursing facilities. And I know the governor responded to that late, but we saw the outcome of that in New York when the governor moved folks with COVID into nursing facilities, the number of deaths, the outrageous number of deaths that we saw there. But at the same time, you have to understand the freedom and liberties that we have of individuals. And I think individuals, once educated, make the right decisions on what they should do from social distancing, right decisions for the families, right decisions on wearing masks. We've seen a lot of businesses, private businesses, that say, look, if you come into our facility, you need to be wearing a mask, and you need to require social distancing, even to the grocery stores going in the right directions. So we as a state left it up to communities to make those decisions. We gave them guidelines, we gave them CDC guidelines, and we let them know that the communities, depending on what they were demographically, like a Miami that's stacked vertically, or a rural community, have to make the best decisions for their constituents and their communities. So, thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Mr. Payne, question to you first. Everyone knows it's been an eventful year in our nation related to protests about racial justice and concerns about justice for all, and then counter-protests. What is your view for the state of Florida toward balancing public safety with the right of protest? And are you satisfied with the laws that are in place, or should some restructuring be done?
Thank you for the question. Certainly in the state of Florida, we know that we've not seen the protests that's seen nationally throughout areas like Portland, some of the other major cities that are Democratic-run areas that have succumbed to rioting, looting, burning down buildings, regardless of your race or color. Those are protests that are irresponsible. I believe every citizen in the state, under our articles in our Constitution, has the right to peacefully protest. We saw some peaceful protests in our community, know the members that were involved, and had great respect. What happens is when you bring in the radicals that are anarchists from the outside, that get entrenched into the Democratic Party so much that they're funding these liberal mentalities and these Marxist ideas, they can't be extracted from the Democratic Party because that's who's funding them. And so I would say that I have a great deal of faith in our first responders and our police. We've seen that throughout the state. The governor has a new initiative to make sure people don't riot, loot, and do harm to businesses. We'll be supporting that in the legislature this year. So I was happy with the response and the message that was sent. It's unfortunate that we have people that are anarchists and are funded by big names like Soros and others who are in to create a liberal mentality and a chaos situation that often costs individuals, entrepreneurs, businesses, and it's a shame that it's happened. But I do believe in the amendment rights for peaceful protest and First Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Duggar, again, it has been an eventful year in the United States related to deaths, racial justice, and then counter-protests. What is your view about balancing public safety versus the right of assembly and protest? And what should Florida do to be prepared if these type of protests and counter-protests come to the Sunshine State?
I think we're already preparing, and we're at a crossroads in our country as far as racial injustice goes. I think it's just a wake-up call. The pandemic we just spoke about, as well as the race riots and the murders of unarmed citizens. These people have a right to be outraged, and we can't say that we've walked in their shoes. It is time. It is our opportunity now to bring people together. And how are those people? They are angry. They are mad. But what are they supposed to do? So I agree. I attended the peaceful protests. Wonderful two young people that spearheaded it. And I do, as Mr. Payne was saying, these people that come in and white supremacy groups and they are not welcome, but they try to exercise their freedom of speech. It is time that we do allow this. We have to have a national conversation about it and be honest about it if we can move forward as a country. I'd like to see an increase in funding for policemen. They're not, we can't blame it on them. I just like to, you've got examples of policemen, ones that were involved in those murders, that you looked and they had 10 cases of, abuse of force already on their record, and nobody noticed it, or they just allowed them to keep on working. So yes, I would like to see an increased funding for policemen.
Thank you. And this next question goes to you first, Ms. Duggar. It's a corollary to the last question. The issue of Confederate monuments and statues has been widely debated nationwide, but particularly in the South, in Florida and here in Putnam County. So what is your view on preserving relics of the Confederacy? Do you understand why many in our community would be offended by them, or do you believe it's history and should be preserved where it is, as it is?
It is history, and it should be preserved. But why it bothers and it brings back terrible memories of a large portion of our society. And who are we to say that it doesn't? And that's what people have to open up their minds, dig deep in their hearts, and say, you know what? I don't understand you. I don't have to understand you, but I don't have to demonize you because we disagree. These monuments, they've been moved, and it really does strike at the chord of so many people. I know a friend of mine went to Washington and Lee, and that monument they voted pretty quickly to move it, one of the major monuments there. And it bothered a lot of people. And, that's okay. But we all have an option to grow. And it's about growth, and it's about understanding. And I think it's been far too long. We passed the Civil Rights Act in 1964, and we're not there yet. And that's a travesty on our community and our nation. But I do agree that they are historical and they do need to be preserved. But I do believe that they need to be moved. And I think it's about people need to open up their minds and have a new understanding, so we can all get along together. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Payne, question to you. Confederate monuments, statues, hot button issue. It really gets folks emotions stoked throughout the South and here in Putnam County. What is your view on the monuments and the relics of the Confederacy, and how should they be handled?
Thank you for the question. So first off, let's say that we need to determine what the complexion and what the perspective of our community should be. Everyone in our community has equal rights, and we support that. The monument itself created some hysteria in Putnam County because I think of the nature of the fact that the monument had been there for so many years, and because of some of the racial unrest that occurred throughout the nation, brought to light that it was a monument that was erected in the 1920s. That monument, and I would say it this way, that monument at the last stop of where you're going for justice in the county is potentially an issue, and perhaps some of the words that are on it. But moving that monument does not sanitize history for us. It means we found a more appropriate place to put it where people are aware of it. Many people I've talked to in the community on that particular monument were not even aware it existed and what was on it. If it were erected during a Jim Crow era and had some elitist mentalities, it's most likely in the wrong spot. Monuments throughout the nation, some of monuments that represent not only blacks, but whites, have been destroyed by those who didn't know better, that didn't know what the monument stood for. Monuments that are memorials to soldiers who died certainly should not be considered racist statements. They should be a statement of we are honoring our fallen soldiers that fell in this war, representing a portion of our country back during that particular time frame. And so I would say again this way, it doesn't sanitize history. There should be some concern for moving monuments. Now, with regard to the monument placa, the board could put it up for a vote, but you elect leaders to make decisions. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. But with regard to that particular monument, there was another two elements of it that people don't understand. Those people that wanted it moved had to pay for it, and the county got to choose where to place it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question before we go to final comments. In Florida, the right for felons to vote is a continuing issue being debated. What is your view on whether a convicted felon should be allowed to have the right to vote again? And what would you do to move the state either toward adopting that viewpoint or maintaining its current status, and justify why you think it should be one way or the other?
It's really a
Mr. I'm
matter.
sorry, I missed it. Mr. Payne, it's your time.
Okay.
Yes.
So I was involved in that decision last year, Amendment 4 from 2 years ago, where initially John Mills, who was the Speaker of the House, came before the Supreme Court of Florida and said, we want to restore voting rights for felons. And the questions were asked by the Supreme Court. Will they be required to pay the fine, fees, and restitution, or the demands of the judge in that case? He said yes. We have that as video evidence. When it turned into a ballot initiative, that was left off. So what people voted for was not what the Supreme Court heard to be able to put it on the ballot from a citizen's initiative. We protested that the fact we contested the issue at the Florida legislature and at the Senate and said, look, we will give voting rights back if they pay fine, fees, and restitution. That's gone all the way back to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court upheld our decision, and we believe that's the right decision. Pay fine, fees, and restitution. Now, if you listen to any of the Supreme Court justice debate today, you heard the Amy Coney Barrett talk about her decision and a few of the issues of whether felons should have voting rights back if they have not had violent felons. But it's in our Constitution. That's part of the Constitution. The way you get those back is paying fine, fees, and restitution. And it's clearly stated if you go back and look at the history of how it became on the ballot. So I support our position in the legislature that you must pay fine, fees, and restitution before you get any of your voting rights back, just like you would have to do for gun rights or any other public office. But thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Ms. Duggar, the right for felons to vote is an issue in Florida. What is your view about a felon being allowed to vote, and what would you do to make sure that your viewpoint is the one that is adopted in Florida?
Well, it's not very simple. It's not a simple solution. In fact, there's many dynamics involved. It has to do with mass incarceration. And so many, 95,000 plus inmates and many, many more who are sitting in jails that should be let out. And because of mandatory minimum guidelines, they're stuck there and many of them did not have fair representation, didn't have any money, and it's just not a fair system. The Department of Corrections is broken. It's been broken for a long time, and it is very easy to get a felony, and many of these inmates, their highest earning years are taken away, and when they get out, they are broken. And I worked out at Florida State Prison for 5 years. I know, I've seen it. My ex-husband was the warden there, and he was secretary for Department of Corrections for many years. So it is not that simple of a solution. I absolutely believe that their voting rights should be restored. When this happened, there was so much confusion and miscommunication about how would they find out what their fees were. They couldn't find out how much they owed. They couldn't find out how much restitution. And that's typical of the Department of Corrections. So it really wasn't, it's the system. It's the system that was not clear, and these people have a hard time, ex-inmates have a hard time getting back into society anyway. If you don't believe they have a second chance, then you probably don't believe in restoring their voting rights. But I absolutely believe they do, and they could be contributing members of society if they do come back. And I would make sure that we find out what their fees are, and then maybe even be reduced so they could become voters again.
Thank you. We'll now come to the part of the forum in which each candidate has the opportunity to make a closing statement of 1 minute. Ms. Duggar went first at the beginning, so Mr. Payne, you go first on the closing statement.
I'm not sure if it'll be enough, but I'll tell you that as a legislator, when I ran for my first election in 2016, I spent 20 months campaigning. I was in Tallahassee often. I was meeting with people. I filled out numerous surveys, and I met with many, many people to get their endorsement. And I finally did, and I won. But it's important to recognize as legislators, we don't know everything. So we use lobbyists, we use interest groups, we use associations, we use numerous other people to help us understand and navigate the issues in Tallahassee. Through those questionnaires and through the race, and using our shareholders, I spent a year getting local campaign contributions, 92% which were local, where my opponents had over 90% out of state. So I understand what Mrs. Duggar said. But as a legislator, I've proven my worth, and so therefore those folks come to see us and give us opportunities to again represent their clients and clients all over the area. I could talk much more about the water bill. I could talk much more about prison reform and reductions that we're seeing. I could talk about virtual schools and what happens if you have virtual schools and no broadband. But what I would say is that as your legislator, I worked hard. I continue to work hard every day. I'm one of the most available and accessible representatives throughout the state, and I humbly ask for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Duggar?
Our district has so many wonderful possibilities. I am asking you tonight to join me in looking out, not for ourselves, but for everybody, all people. This is our opportunity to use humanity, kindness, and compassion to each other, to bring out the best in each of us, to work together to raise the standards of our community and our environment. Right now, we all face the COVID virus. It's not about rich or poor, black or white, Democrat or Republican. We must practice empathy for our fellow man to deal with racial unrest. And if my opponent sent out a flyer recently that said he was the right leader for our community, if you are satisfied with our community being last, ranking last in all of Florida, then maybe he is the right leader. I am not a petition, but I want to leave you with a saying that I heard one say just recently. Politics is a game and you got to play, because it's better to be at the table than on the menu. I guess I will be on the menu. I will be fighting hard.
Thank you both, Mr.
Thank
Duggar,
you.
Mr. Payne.
Appreciate it.
Thank you to our viewers and readers. We will now take a quick break and come back with candidates for Palatka City Commission.
2.
Good evening. I am Michael Leonard, publisher of the Palatka Daily News, and I welcome you here to the third portion of tonight's 2020 Putnam County Candidate Forum. This forum is co-sponsored by the Palatka Daily News and St. John's River State College, which is our host. We are in the boardroom at St. John's River State College, the Palatka campus. This third portion of tonight's forum features the race for Seat 3, Group 3 is what it's called, on Palatka City Commission. We have two candidates for that race. David Parsons is with us tonight. Unfortunately, the second candidate, Willie Jones, informed me that he would not be able to attend, regrets that he could not. So we will just be hearing from Mr. Parsons tonight. This forum will take the form of a 2-minute opening statement by Mr. Parsons, after which he'll be asked questions. He has 2 minutes to respond to each question. When we get close to the 50-minute mark, he'll be able to make a closing statement. Actually, it will not take 50 minutes this time since there's only one candidate this time. So, allow me to introduce David Parsons, candidate for Group 3, Palatka City Commission, and you may make your opening statement.
Thank you very much, Michael. And thank the college for having us here tonight. Like Michael said, my name is David Parsons. I'm running for the Palatka City Commission Group 3. I'm a 30-year resident of the city of Palatka. I graduated from Palatka High School, St. John's River State College, and went on to graduate from the University of North Florida. My wife and I both are from Palatka, and we've been married for 12 years now. We have 2 kids that both attend Putnam County schools. I do work for Putnam County School District in the Department of Federal Programs. I help to manage their grants, and we have about $13.5 million in grants there. So my experience working in grants and budgets with my other positions elsewhere that make me a real good candidate. I worked out at the St. John's River Water Management District here at the college, and then also worked for the Palatka Police Department. At the police department, that kind of gave me the experience that to see what the employees go through and what what our needs are as city employees for that side of it. I'm the chairman of the Palatka Young Professionals as well as the Blue Crab Festival this year, and hopefully next year as we are able to have it. I'm on the St. John's River State College Foundations Board as well as the Putnam County Affordable Housing Committee.
Okay, all right then. Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Parsons, either you or your opponent will be replacing the revered Commissioner and Vice Mayor, Mary Lawson Brown, who has served on the commission since 1984, and she is retiring. What do you learn from her service to the community, and what steps will you take to assure residents that you will listen to their concerns as Ms. Brown has?
And Ms. Brown has been, she's been there for 36 years, as you mentioned, and she's a lot to look up to, and big shoes to fill. We always laugh when people say that joke. She's, real short, but it is important. She's been there and listened to all the citizens, and that's important to me as well. It doesn't matter, the race, the age, political party. We're there for everybody, and that's what's important to me and what we've seen Ms. Brown do throughout the years, and bringing new ideas to the city. I think that's what's important, and seeing what she did over the last 36 years she's been there. But it's definitely somebody to look up to.
Thank you. How would you work on the city commission and with other city leaders and the business community to boost revitalization efforts in Palatka? How would you work to grow businesses already in Palatka? And what would you do specifically to attract new jobs and talent to the city?
We have a lot of organizations in Palatka that are working on that now. And as the chairman of the Palatka Young Professionals, we were, we started as a group that we wanted to, our main focus was events and having events downtown. That brings people downtown, which makes businesses see, okay, we have people that are there and there's foot traffic. So let's bring our business and be able to do that. The Stewart Group has been a big group that has helped to bring ideas and to bring those people. I think we're making good strides as it is. as I come on the commission, I think I bring a balance and a friendship with the other. I have a good rapport with the other commissioners that are currently there, and then as well as, with the county, I have a rapport with the county commissioners there that, I've worked with them through Blue Crab and a number of things. I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee, so I think it's having everybody being able to work together is very important. That we're all working in the same direction and being able to, listen to all the citizens and to help, help improve downtown. I think we are on an upswing. I think we've had a number of buildings that have sold recently, and we have a lot of local investors, and that's important, a balance of local as well as out of town. So we don't need a full, out of town owners completely, and they've done a great job of having local people that are stepping up and putting their money in and being able to have their own business.
Thank you. As a related question, what do you see the biggest challenges are revitalizing the town that the city faces economically and socially? What would you do in your first year in office to help push Palatka forward? Specific examples.
I think it's very important that our code enforcement, kind of step up and get more involved. I think right now they are there, but our code enforcement board, they didn't make a quorum for the last meeting, and so if we can get code enforcement going and being able to get our properties cleaned up and have the city put their best foot forward, that's going to bring other people and make the city look good in and of itself. I've got a lot of complaints from citizens of litter. People, you drive down the street, you have trash on the side of the road, and I think that's something that code enforcement, as they work through their cases and we clean up properties, that they would be able to help, work with that. And there are fines for littering, and so, them being able to enforce that and cleaning up the city so that we do truly put our best foot forward.
You touched on a question that is on my list for later on, so let me just ask it now. We all know that you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Right.
So litter definitely diminishes the luster of that first impression. We have dilapidated buildings, overgrown lots, litter, as you've discussed. Now, there have been some improvements. Do the codes need to be strengthened? More teeth? Should we be less lenient with the imposition of fines? What things can we do truly to get ahead of this problem?
I think right now they've just moved code enforcement under the community affairs group, which I think is a great idea. A lot of our houses and places where we have people that may not be able to take care of their space, they want to, but they don't have the funds or the energy or whatever it is to be able to do that. And I think our code enforcement being under our community affairs, we have a lot of organizations, service organizations that could help those people. And so being able to go, between, okay, we have this person that could use some help. Is there anybody that could come over here and help them? And that would get some of those properties cleaned up, which would, be an immense help. We have a lot of out-of-town owners of properties as well, and I think those are the ones that we really want to focus the fines and, okay, you're not going to live here, so you don't have an idea of what it looks like, but you need to make sure that it's kept up one way or the other. I think enforcing the codes that we have is important. I don't know that we necessarily, need to start off with strengthening them. I think just enforcing what we have and then being able to work in the community that we're all together. Keep Putnam Beautiful is a big partner, and they work, tirelessly in cleaning up the community, but they may come by one day and the next day there's litter there again. So I think, being able to talk to people and just say, hey, put your trash in the trash can. I think down at the riverfront and those places are where a lot of our litter is, and maybe just a few more garbage cans. Disney always says, every 10 feet type of thing. And obviously that's a little overload, but, take things where, it works, let's implement that here.
Thank you. Let's talk for a minute about how the city of Palatka has approached the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly with its implementation of a mask mandate for indoor businesses. Governor Ron DeSantis has said that you can't require people to pay fines for violating the ordinance or the mandate to wear masks in public. Mayor Hill has said home rule should govern cities, not the state. What would you do differently in fighting the pandemic, and what is your viewpoint related to home rule versus coming from the state?
I think that's a tough question. It is hard not being in that position, and knowing, I know they sit through the calls with the health department, and things change daily. But it's a national concern of what's going on with the pandemic. And so I do think it's important locally that we are able to, the home rule is in effect there, that we can, govern the citizens as we see necessary. I think that's a tough decision, but we also, we need to be able to work with the governor and have that two-way communication on that. I think, if he sits down and listens to people, all of the cities, I think that would be most important there. But I think it is important that the commission itself is able to govern how it sees most fit.
Okay, thank you. There's consensus that Palatka needs better infrastructure if it is going to see growth, especially long-term quality growth. More work is planned along St. John's Avenue toward road and utility improvements. The city's water system has been a source of frequent problems, but it is being worked on. What would you do as commissioner to help improve the city's infrastructure, and how would you see the funds being made available to pay for this?
I think it's important, first off, that we have a plan. I know, with the water lines, they do have plans for the North and the South Historic District, but I've heard them talk about plans for the roads. We're 15 years off for a lot of our roads that they're actually in a usable state and they're okay. But right now, especially while we have these grants and grant funds available, it's important that we take advantage of that and get the projects done that we need to, so that we can get ahead. I think for a while it seemed like maybe the work didn't get done as it should have, and so now we're playing catch up. If we didn't, we should have replaced wood and water lines a long time ago, but we do still have some. So or were recently replaced. So I think being able to play catch up and using these grants and working through with Tallahassee to make that effort and be able to get ahead, and then we'll be able to make a plan of, okay, we know this road, we need to plan ahead that it's going to need to be replaced, and we can make, fiscal responsibility in knowing that this is where our funds are going.
Thank you. Everyone agrees that one of Palatka's greatest assets is the St. Johns River and the riverfront. What can the city do better to utilize this asset as a catalyst for growth?
I think they've done a great job so far. They've put in the biking kiosk, and it's part of the trail and having the river center there. I think they should try to draw in more events and be able to to host and do something where you're drawing people down there. They should have monthly events. That's, as the young professionals, that's what we were working to do before the pandemic. It showcases the river. We get things like the Bassmaster Elite that comes in, and millions of people see Palatka on ESPN. So I think they're doing a good job with that, but we need to work to continue and allow those places to come in, and maybe loosen up some of the fees and things that there are when you have events. Blue Crab, it costs a lot of money to put it on, and a lot of that are city fees. So I think being able to work with organizations that are having events will be important in the future.
Relations between the city and the county have been warm in the past, and they've been cool. Currently, they would be described as certainly not warm. What would you do as a city commissioner to foster a better relationship with the Board of County Commissioners and work together as two bodies to push the community forward?
And that is important for the two to work together. I think I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee now just as a citizen, but being involved in their committees and in their board meetings, and it's especially easy as they're online right now, just knowing what they have going on. I do have that rapport with a lot of the commissioners. I talk to a few of them quite frequently, and then even the staff. The sheriff's office is a part of the county, and we've worked with them with Blue Crab and a number of things. And so I think having that relationship with those organizations is very important in moving everybody forward, the county as a whole, not just the city.
Thank you. What would you do to address the high turnover rates that we see on the Palatka Police Department and the Fire Department? What can the city do to fill these positions with qualified applicants, keep them here, pay them more, rather than seeing them leave for another city or county?
The first responders, the public safety is important. That's my one of my top priorities is, you have a better community when you do have, a better fire department, a better police department, and those type of things. But I think being able to have the housing for these people, I think a lot of times they come in and we just don't necessarily have, what they're looking for, or, we do have a lot of public housing, and public housing is important. It's a need for people that need it, but we also, need to have that middle grade housing, which is part of what being on the Affordable Housing Committee to me is, these are the people that are, our first responders. They're that mid-level that would be in that type of market. And I think a lot of times that would be what takes people away. As we get more businesses as well, I think that would help. Just having things to do in town is important to a lot of people. So I know with law enforcement, a lot of times it's hard to live and work in a community like that together. I know we don't have a lot of people that live, they live out of the city itself. If there's any officers at this point that live in the city. So it is hard to live and govern at the same time, just because you know everybody at that point. But I think, if we put an emphasis on first priority being able to pay them, and then, working towards being able to have the housing that's gonna, these people are gonna wanna live in, that's important.
You touched on a topic here that is interesting. Does the city commission have a role in trying to promote affordable housing or middle-class housing in the county or in the city?
I think it does for both. I think the county does have the Affordable Housing Committee, which works on programs like the SHIP program, and which gives money for people that are building houses. But the city commission meets with the Palatka Housing Authority. They had in the past, I know I've at least been to one or two of those joint meetings that they've had, and so they do work together in that capacity. But I think as being able to draw in people, builders maybe that want to develop the area. I think that as a commissioner, that would be important. Being able to work with those people and help, show them Palatka where they want to help build and help develop.
One issue that has come up in the past year is the future of City Hall. Whether it is adequate for the city's needs at present, if a newer structure is needed that could consolidate some of the departments and better serve the needs of city staff and residents. Where do you stand on that? And what would you do as a commissioner if you choose to say, we need a different City Hall, to find a suitable home and to pay for it?
I do think we need to continue to look at those type of things. That building is old. It's the IT infrastructure in the building itself is not adequate. It's a very small meeting room. Right now, as they're spaced out, you have room for maybe 3 or 4 citizens in there while we're in the pandemic. So the space itself is very small. There's not a ton of employees at City Hall itself, but I do think that's something that we need to look to for the future, is being able to upgrade something, whether it's that building. I don't know that the space that they were looking at previously was necessarily in the right place. I think it's the perfect building, but it doesn't necessarily serve the city as it should. So I think that's a hard thing to look at, but I do think as a city we have to continually stay on top of what is the best technology, and can we at least stay with the curve. It doesn't have to be ahead, but we need to keep up with it. Or we, run into issues when you have a pandemic and you're not prepared for it, that type of thing. So it will be important in the future for us to have a plan for that.
Thank you. That completes the prepared questions we had for this evening. Again, Mr. Jones was not with us, so we're finishing up a little early. Before we turn it over to Mr. Parsons to make his closing statement, let me just remind everyone who's watching that we will be back here tomorrow night at 6 p.m. for 3 more races. At 6 o'clock, we'll have 3 candidates for County Commission, District 3. At 7 o'clock, we have 2 candidates for Putnam County Sheriff. And at 8 o'clock, we have 2 candidates for Putnam County Superintendent of Schools. These are, of course, our very important races, as are the ones that we have talked about tonight. We hope that you will join us. Now, let me give Mr. Parsons the opportunity to make a closing statement, and we will then tell you good night.
Thank you for having me again. I just, want the citizens of Palatka to know that I'm here for them. It doesn't matter, like I said before, it doesn't matter their race, their political affiliation, gender, age. I'm here for everybody. I always have been in all my previous jobs, even in a management role. I've had, a very diverse group that's worked for me, and that's what I want to do is, work for the public as a whole. That's what we do as a commissioner. I think my experiences in all have culminated together to make me the ideal candidate, and I look forward to serving you.
Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Parsons. And again to everyone, we'll be back here tomorrow night, 6 p.m. for forums at 6, 7, and 8. Thank you for watching, and thank you for reading the Palatka Daily News. Good night.